And what was the jiu-jitsu scene like back then? Because obviously now jiu-jitsu is a very mainstream sport, but this is what, 33 years ago. So what was it like at the time?
Look, it was a lot smaller. The level in Rio de Janeiro was amazing at the time. You know, some of the best coaches that are spread throughout the world nowadays, a lot of them came from that generation that was before my generation.
Hmm.
So we had like great inspiration and motivation from the guys that were a little bit older than us, because there was already some nice competitions, but we didn't have the big events yet, and the really good gyms were just a few,
Mm.
you know, and mostly they were in Rio de Janeiro. We had some groups in Manaus, some groups in São Paulo, but the core of jiu-jitsu at the time was Rio de Janeiro. And what can I say more about the time? It was more roots really, because there was no advantage. You need to really make points at least to win a match, or else
Hmm.
you would go to the judge's decision. And to be honest, back then it was a total shit show, like, because refs were always give points to the guys in their gym, forget about
Okay.
the guys from the other gym. So sometimes you would go to a match and know if you don't submit, you're not gonna win, because
The
the
judges.
referee is my opponent's coach, and that was kind of the way it was back then, you know.
Mm. And who did you start with? Who was your first coach, or who was it
My
affiliated
yeah,
to?
my first group was Gracie Barra. It was called actually Barra Gracie, and the head coach was Carlos Gracie Jr., and there was some other coaches there. But on my first year, I mostly learned from, not from the coaches, but from the brown and purple belts, because the way they structure the class in Brazil there, the group classes back then, it was you would come, do a lot of warm up, learn one technique, and
Mm-hmm.
go row.
Mm.
And then next day, another totally different technique. And maybe if you have a month of jiu-jitsu, you will learn some advanced stuff. So you really needed help from your friends, because there was no structure. And like sometimes, so as long as Carlos Gracie Jr. was the main coach at the time, I learned from Gordo, from Hélio Soneca Moreira, from Draculino, from Soca. Those were the guys, and the Duda. There was some guys that was blue, purple, brown belts when I was white belt. Those guys helped me a lot more than the coaches.
Mm.
Until I went to America, I trained 3 months with Rickson,
Mm-hmm.
and he was teaching the classes himself, so I learned a lot on that period. And when I come back to Brazil, I start to really go. Renzo didn't have his own gym, so but Renzo was teaching in a place with like very small group. And by then, Roger was maybe 12, 13 years old, Roger
Mm-hmm.
Gracie. He
Yep.
was coming, watching. His father was one of the black belts that would destroy me at the
Mm.
time. You know, Mauricio Gomes was amazing. And I would go to Renzo to train. I was still training because Renzo was part of the Barra Gracie,
Mm-hmm.
but I start to feel like Renzo was my coach. Already as a blue belt, I start to train with him and go to him because he was teaching many more things. So this is the guy that really was my coach all the way to purple brown belt level. But I got my brown belt. He was already in the United States, and Carlos Gracie Jr. was really the same thing, not really caring about his students. So I eventually moved out to train with two black belts from Carson Gracie Jr.
Mm.